made some progress since July, when basically, thanks to Terry Chapman and Warwick Jacobs at the Hovercraft Museum in UK, who very kindly arranged to find, locate, and transport missing parts for our PAC-V, the Patrol Air Cushion Vehicle from Vietnam. We were missing prop, we were missing drivetrain, we were missing rudders and elevators and other parts. And again, thanks to Terry and Warwick, those parts were located in the Hovercraft Museum in Lyon-Solent on the Isle of Wight, or rather in England. And they shipped them back in a spare space on a cargo container. And since they've arrived now, we've been in the process of doing a dry fitting of those parts, just putting them into place, making sure that we can go ahead and everything fits, and we had to do a little bit of modification here and there on one of the elevators, for instance. But once we've got all these parts dry fit, then we'll take them apart and paint them and carry on with the static display that we're putting together on this SKB, British Hovercraft Corporation SK5. And one of the things that we're also aiming to do is to locate an engine to stick in that big empty engine space up on top, where originally it was a Rolls-Royce Gnome 1051 gas turbine engine of about 1,000 horsepower. When the Navy got a hold of these craft, Bell Aerosystems, as it was known at the time, in Buffalo, New York, changed them out to all U.S. specifications, including a General Electric engine. All the nuts and bolts were changed also so that they could be worked on in the field by the Navy in Vietnam. And basically, we've got a gentleman here today, Cease Rempel, who, along with a former Canadian Coast Guard hovercraft officer, and along with the current head of the Canadian Coast Guard hovercraft unit in Vancouver, Brian Whitten, are aiming to try to help us locate one of a missing engine that we can plug into that spot up there. And that'll be pretty brilliant, because it will be the final big sort of gap on this hovercraft that will put it all back together. And we're really, again, so fortunate that we've had an opportunity to save this craft from disappearing into the dark shadows of history. And you know, it's actually in pretty good shape. It's undercover, and we're slowly plugging away, you know, at working on it. We've had a recent surge of people like model makers who come from around the country and in some cases around the world to take measurements. The SK5 is undergoing a sort of a renaissance of interest in radio control scale model and regular model stuff. And so in addition to the fact that veterans who served on this craft in Vietnam have an opportunity to come and see it, and we have the opportunity to provide the information for these model makers to make accurate scale models, this is proving out to be a pretty great thing to save for the purposes of history. And we've had it all together here in Bellingham now for approaching 30 years, along with a bunch of our Uniflight Bellingham-built Vietnam-era patrol boat rivers, PBRs they're called. Now, one of the things that's interesting is, again, that this particular craft, it turns out the first PBR we'd ever got out of California, out of a landfill, which is next door to this one. These two served in combat together in Vietnam in 1968 on the Perfume River on a thing called Mobile Base 1. And it's just pretty thrilling to historians, and particularly military historians, to think that these two old guys who served together in Vietnam are now side by side here in our cold, dark hovercraft or Maritime Museum in Bellingham, sitting side by side and again continuing to tell war stories, I guess, at night when it's dark and the wind's shaking the whole building. So I just, once again, I can't say enough for Terry Chapman and for Warwick Jacobs for making it possible for us to put this thing back into what resembles, or will resemble pretty much its original condition, and to thank our friends in the Canadian Coast Guard for helping us also in putting the parts together for this restoration. Thanks very much.